Welcome back. Peta launched the podcast Just So You Know, exploring controversial and questionable hidden practices of large corporations. The podcast connects to younger generations who seek to understand how these industries affect animals and our planet. Hosts Jamie Logan and Justina Adorno join me to discuss the podcast and how they use their platforms to advocate for animal rights. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Yay. Thanks for having us.
Of
It's exciting that
course.
we're able to come here and talk about what we're passionate about.
Yeah, so I want to know, how did it actually begin? I saw a little bit of the podcast and, I had to work, so I couldn't watch the entire thing, but it was really so interesting. So, how did it actually all begin?
Yes, thanks for asking. So it was definitely a process. And I have my own show called Jamie's Corner where I talk to people on the street, and I have a podcast outside of Just So You Know. And I try to bring entertainment and humor to these devastating subjects. And somebody at Peta saw some of my stuff, and they reached out to me and they were like, we're thinking about doing something similar and really trying to reach a younger crowd and reach Gen Z with these pressing topics. And they pitched the idea of possibly doing a podcast. And at first, when we scheduled the call, our boss, Joel, he was like, well, can you set up a Zoom meeting? And I was like, am I in trouble? Like, what's going on? And we loved the idea, and I thought this would be so fun to have a co-host. And Justina and I met because we were both speaking at National Animal Rights Day, and right off the bat, we just hit it off.
Yeah, we were like, some. And like we worked together with acting coaching. Jamie was in a film, and she was like, do you know anyone who can help me? And I was like, me. And we just started realizing like we're a good team, and it's just been a collaborative process.
There's
so
that chemistry. Yeah, the chemistry is just there. Like it really feels like two friends having a conversation, and it's really just, we have a blast doing it, and we're learning in the process.
Right.
So that's really what we want to show people, is that if we can change our lifestyle and be better to the planet and the animals, really anybody can.
Right.
Now, I think this is amazing because I kind of want to jump into it when you talk about lifestyle. When you're not doing the podcast, you both have your ways of advocating for animal rights.
Right.
Can you both just talk about, what that experience is? I know it's very different, like the ones that we'll get into today, but I think it's amazing because it shows that no matter where you are on the spectrum, you can do something. So can you talk about what you do to advocate for animal rights?
Yeah, it's kind of a dream job that we're able to do the podcast and still extend our lives to our different passions, because I come from a theater acting background, and so I love telling stories for the voiceless. So it's kind of like I'm doing something different outside of the podcast, but it all feels collectively the same, because we both kind of like, no matter what, this is our mission, and we're making sure that it's bleeding into all of our passions. Because every day it's something that we're talking about, something that we're thinking about. And in the entertainment business, I make sure that even though the project I'm not a part of is about veganism, the makeup I'm using is vegan, the hair products that I'm using are vegan, there are vegan options to eat on set, and the list goes on, and it's just about like bringing who you are to every part of your life,
Now, I'm glad that you mentioned the entertainment industry, because I think that you took a stand on the runway, which is like part of the entertainment, part of that industry. So, what was that experience like?
I mean, it's always nerve-wracking, and I try to remind myself, that we're doing this for the animals. It's not about me. And the whole time, I just kept the message in mind that we want to show the world how toxic and cruel the leather industry is, not only to animals, but also to people and to the environment.
Right.
And so when Peta asked me if I wanted to crash the Coach runway,
she was like, hell yeah.
I was like, give me that dress, give me those pleather shoes, and I am going on that runway whether they like it or not. And
she worked it.
Thank you. And I mean, you got to play the part, and so I think it was definitely nerve-wracking. I just was like, please don't fall, please don't fall. I had my sign up in the air. I'm like, hopefully this thing is upright. And it made international headlines. And that's why we do what we do, because unfortunately these corporations, unless they want to change, they sometimes have to be forced to change.
Right.
And we present them with undercover findings. We present them with the facts, the figures, and unfortunately sometimes that's not enough, so we have to take things up a notch.
Yeah.
Now, I really like that you're looking at the corporations, because I think that when we talk about animal rights or being eco-conscious, there's always a spotlight on the consumer to make the change. And I mean, that is important as a consumer, but, I think large corporations have a responsibility as well. So can you
100%.
talk about, the experience of like highlighting a large corporation? And do you ever feel like afraid of like targeting, like a big business? Does that come into play when you're doing the podcast as well?
Heck yeah. Especially when, like for me, for instance, I'm in different fields, and so I get nervous about, these big corporations. They fund a lot. Like when we think about the people who are at the top that we don't know about, they're funding so many things, including movies, television, advertising. So it does get nerve-wracking, but at the end of the day, like what Jamie said, like we need to start a ruckus sometimes in order for us to be heard. I mean, any group of individuals that are suppressed, there comes a point where we say enough is enough. I'm gonna shake the table, or I'm gonna shake the table, So it's like we start with the corporations, but it is about the consumer as well, because as we like to address what's happening in corporate worlds, but we are the ones who have the power. So we don't want to miss out on that message. We individually have the power, and it's a domino effect. Everyone has seen A Bug's Life. Hello, like we are the ants, we are the army, we have the power.
Now, where can people go to actually watch the podcast, and what platforms is it on?
Yeah, so Just So You Know is on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Play, really anywhere that you can find your podcasts. And what we're trying to show people is, you have the power to make change. Every single dollar you spend, you are voting either for a system that oppresses others or a system that is more equal and more just and better for us and the planet. And I think Gen Z especially is more concerned about what's happening because our future depends on it.
Correct.
And we are the ones that are going to experience very intense climate change, and water shortage. And we are the ones that are going to have to be dealing with these issues if we don't change our actions now.
Right.
Now, I really want to highlight, which I think is amazing, and I could sense the energy that you guys bring, a relaxed nature and humor to stuff that's, tackling very heavy stuff, very heavy topics. Why do you think this is an effective way to kind of get this information across?
Well, it's really hard to find that balance, which is why I think we were approached for the podcast, because we inevitably can't help but like be ourselves and be silly, even if we're talking about something really heavy. And I think it's so important to lighten things up naturally, because it happens naturally. We're not forcing anything, so that people understand that like just because we're vegan doesn't mean we're like a type of person. Like Jamie and I, we're both from New York, but we come from different backgrounds, different walks of life, and we're fun. We want to make caring cool. I'm sick of people being like picture, video, and no substance behind it. You can still have fun, have entertainment, be cool with caring about what matters. And so like it was so important for us to like, we try to find that balance of like fun, bringing ourselves into it, being relatable, but also having substance behind what we're talking about.
I mean, I think also having people recognize that when you go vegan, you're not sacrificing anything in this day and age. There are so many delicious plant-based options that really you can't tell the difference.
No.
And so we want to show people that it's just an addition to your life. You discover, you eat more of a variety of foods.
Right. It's a whole new world.
Yes, and I think it's super important then when advocating that you be yourself, and that you're each and every one of us are unique, and somebody might relate to me, somebody might relate to Justina, and that we all have a place in this movement. And I went through kind of a journey with my activism, going to slaughterhouses every week and just being honestly really depressed about it. And you can understand why I would like want to throw blood on somebody, but
Fake
then
blood.
I realized fake blood, thank you. But then I realized I was like, this is not sustainable for me. So like, what kind of actions can I take that are going to help me be in this for the long run?
Right.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for joining me and talking about this and really opening another side of just animal rights, animal activism, and thinking about our worlds in another way, and adding humor and a touch of like fresh air to it, because I sometimes think these conversations can involve people that maybe we don't relate to.
Right.
So I want to thank you both so much for joining us and talking about this.
Yes, thank you so much. It's so relatable, and like we just want everyone to just educate themselves a little more, because it's so easy to be behind the phone and just go, okay, this is what people think I should do, but it's like, what do you think you should do? Watch these movies because it affects all of us, especially people of color.
Right.
Let me just say that. We need to make sure that it's not against us. It's not a cultural thing. It's about taking our power back.
Let's fight these big corporations together. It's not an us versus, each other.
Yeah.
It's us versus the big guys.
Right.
And we have so many episodes to look forward to, and thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the Recable cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Hemick on Wednesday and with Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.